What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. Today we're going to get into a big 2025 free agency preview. Legal tampering period begins tomorrow. The official start of free agency begins on Wednesday, but we will begin hearing some things as early as tomorrow. So I wanted to go through the key positions of needs and give you some guys to look for at each position. So we'll start with the quarterback, and the quarterback the New York Jets have been linked to the most throughout this process has been Justin Fields, who feels like, at least for now, things could change, that he will either be going to the Jets or returning to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Justin Fields is 26 years old. His projected contract, according to PFF, is 1 year, $11 million. He started 6 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers a year ago. He was 4-2 in those 6 games. He had 5 passing touchdowns to 1 interception, 6.9 yards per attempt, a 65.8 completion percentage, which was a career high for him, 93.3 passer rating, a career high, 50.8 QBR. He also ran for 289 yards and 5 rushing touchdowns as well. If the Jets were to sign Justin Fields, this is kind of the swing that they're hoping turns into the next Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, where, you know, a guy starts to reach his mid to later 20s, failed in a first stop, went somewhere else for a year or two, didn't necessarily work out, and then becomes a starter later in his career. Now for Fields, even worst case scenario, he's going to be a dynamic rushing attacker. The passing game would take a massive hit. That's, there's no denying that if he doesn't take a step forward in his development. Some are hoping because of his age that there's still more untapped potential. I'm open to the idea of bringing Justin Fields in. I don't know if I would sit here and tell you that I think it's my favorite option or that it's the absolute best, but it is an option with upside. And there's been a link for the last few weeks, so don't be surprised if Justin Fields is the one who is signed to compete with Tyrod Taylor. Next up is Jameis Winston, 31 years old, projected contract is 2 years, 6.25 AAV. High variance quarterback, right? Like he's someone who's going to throw for a bunch of yards, a bunch of touchdowns, and he's going to throw for a ton of interceptions as well and make some really boneheaded decisions. But 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and 7 starts this past year with the Cleveland Browns. He had an 80.6 passer rating, 55.6 QBR, 7.2 yards per attempt. He's not afraid to push the ball down the field, which I think the Jets offense needs to get more vertical in 2025. They were a very east-west instead of north and south. A lot of, short to intermediate passes to the outside rather than trying to push the ball down the field. At least with Jameis Winston, yes, there's going to be mistakes. Yes, there's going to be turnovers, but he's not afraid to take shots down the field and make some potential big plays happen. So I think he would be a fun option. I think the first 2 guys that we talked about, Justin Fields, Jameis Winston, there's going to be some weeks where you're really frustrated with them. There's no denying that. But there's going to also be some weeks where they're a lot of fun. Whether it's, Fields running for, 100 rushing yards and a couple rushing touchdowns, Jameis Winston having like 400 passing yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns in a game. And then there's going to be some clunkers mixed in as well. Some other names to watch. The Jets have been linked to Carson Wentz. I don't really like that one at all, to be completely honest with you. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Jimmy G doesn't do a lot for me, but, that's a name that's very popular amongst the veteran market. Some people really like Cooper Rush, with the Dallas Cowboys. He's been a solid backup the last couple of years. And Taylor Heinicke is a name that is relatively interesting for me. I'm not saying that the guy's a stud and a long-term answer, but if you're comfortable with Tyrod Taylor being your starter, can Taylor Heinicke come in for a 4-week stretch and give you okay football? Yeah, he was a starter in Washington for a season. He was okay. I think he's a fine spot starter type. So those would be some other names to watch. Next up, let's get into the tight end position. The best option for the Jets, honestly, is probably just retaining Tyler Conklin. He's 29 years old. His projected contract's 3 years at a $9 million AAV. It feels like currently a little unlikely that he'll return, but we'll see. Things can change quickly. 51 catches, 449 yards, and 4 touchdowns a year ago. He's a decent 1B tight end option. I don't know if he's someone who you feel like, okay, he's your number 1 and you're good at that point, but in a poor tight end free agency class, he might end up actually being the best available player. So watch for him. If he doesn't return to the Jets, I would think the Saints, the Titans, teams like that would be in the mix there. Speaking of the Saints, Juwan Johnson would be, if you're looking at an external free agent option for the Jets at tight end, I would say this is probably the most likely. 28 years old, 3 years, $9.75 million AAV is the projected deal for him. A year ago, 50 catches, 548 yards, and 3 touchdowns. His best season came in 2022 when he had 7 touchdowns and 508 receiving yards. Now, he's a good red zone option, which is something that the Jets desperately need to improve on. And he ranks pretty high in yards per reception. He's a good option up the seam. I talked about the Jets offense needing to get more vertical. Juwan Johnson helps you with that because he's a mismatch at times with linebackers and then with the smaller defensive backs. So seems like a natural fit. I'm not opposed to this option for the Jets either. John Bates next is 27 years old, doesn't have a projected contract, but I can't really imagine that he's going to be more than, I don't know, $2, maybe $3 million at the absolute most. But he is pretty much strictly a blocking tight end. So very different. I'm not saying sign John Bates and you're all set with the tight end room. But if the Jets are looking for a blocking first tight end, this is the exact prototype that you're looking for. Again, like I said, he wouldn't be signed as the main guy, but Tanner Engstrand's offense is most likely going to be a run-heavy offense. Detroit ran a ton of 12 personnel, which means 2 tight ends on the field. If they sign Justin Fields, which again is the quarterback they've been linked to the most so far in the offseason, he would fit that mold to help in the rushing attack. Giving you some other names, Evan Ingram, veteran at this point in his career, more of a receiving tight end. Gerald Everett, Mo Alley Cox. Not that I'm really all that impressed. It kind of drops off a cliff pretty quickly. So my advice to the Jets would be either retain Tyler Conklin, or if you're going to go somewhere else, Juwan Johnson makes the most sense. All right, next up, let's do wide receivers. Now, I wouldn't say, don't expect the Jets to go big fish hunting here. Like if you're holding out hope for a T. Higgins trade, or if you think they're going to sign Chris Godwin, I think you're going to go into this fairly disappointed. But I'll give you some names in the mid to low tier that makes sense for the Jets trying to fill out the depth on this unit. They're not looking for a number 1 wide receiver. They're looking for like a 2 and 3 option. Darius Slayton's a name that's going to get brought up a lot. Makes a ton of sense. 28 years old, projected contract, 3 years, $12.5 million AAV. A year ago, 39 catches, 573 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had over 700 receiving yards in 4 of his first 6 years in the league with the Giants. And something that stands out to me is he's put up numbers and performed. Now, I'm not saying you're going to the Hall of Fame with 700 receiving yards, but you're a capable wide receiver, and the Jets need capable wide receivers, and he's performed with some pretty god-awful quarterback play over the years. He plays as an outside receiver, which is what the Jets will be looking for, in my opinion. I think he's another threat down the field, which I've talked a lot about so far, the Jets needing more deep threats, and I think he fits that mold. Has worked with Tyrod a little bit. Obviously, Tyrod was at the Giants for the last couple of years before he came over to the New York Jets, so I think Slayton would make a ton of sense. Speaking of guys in a similar mold, Joshua Palmer, 25 years old. I'm thinking somewhere around 3 years, $8 million AAV for him. Last year, 39 catches, 584 yards. His best year was 72 catches, 769 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I do think, even though his stats haven't been quite there yet, he does have some wide receiver 2 upside. He's younger, which I like. He plays out wide. His body type, 6'2", 210. Doesn't have blazing speed. He ran a 4.5 40, but pretty good hands. Nice, a bigger body guy. Can make plays over the middle of the field. Has the ability to make plays downfield. Could be a red zone threat. I'm interested in Joshua Palmer. I think if you're looking on the younger side, that's who I'd target. Honestly, if you can get 2 guys and sign Darius Slayton, Joshua Palmer, I'd be pretty happy with that, all things considered. I'm not saying that those guys are studs, but again, the Jets are just looking for capable bodies at this point, and I don't think they're going to break the bank in comparison to some other guys. Diami Brown's a name to watch. He's just 25 years old. His projected deal is 1 year, $2 million. He might get more than the projection, if you ask me, though. He had 30 catches for 308 yards and a touchdown last year, which doesn't really jump off the page to you, but he had an excellent playoff run with the Washington Commanders. 14 catches, 229 yards, and a touchdown in a 3-game span. So really came on strong down the stretch for them. He's 6 foot, 195 pounds, lines up out wide, has 4.4 speed, so a little bit quicker than Josh Palmer. Aaron Glenn talked about adding guys with some speed, so I think this is a player that would make some sense. And the last guy that I'll talk about before giving you just some other names to watch, we'll spend some time on Tim Patrick. 31 years old, spent last year with Detroit. 1 year, $2 million is his projection. Bigger outside receiver, 6'4", 212. 33 catches, 339 yards, and 3 touchdowns a year ago. A lot of threes mixed in. He did have back-to-back 700-yard receiving seasons before an ACL and Achilles injury kept him out in 22 and 23. Injuries are a concern. I'm not glossing over that. I think it's important to note when talking about Tim Patrick, but something that is going to be appealing for a player like him is his ability as a run blocker. We're talking about Patrick as a third wide receiver. So maybe I take it back. I think, Tim Patrick's much more likely to sign with the Jets, but a Darius Slayton or Josh Palmer paired with Tim Patrick is a good start of changing over this wide receiver room. Other names that have been linked to the Jets are talked about, or that I think is worthwhile to look at: Demarcus Robinson, Brandon Cooks, Noah Brown, Keenan Allen. Not my favorite options. I listed some of my more favorite options, but just other names to keep an eye on. Last positional group on the offensive side of the ball before we get to defense: offensive tackle, specifically right tackle. Morgan Moses, 34 years old, projected contract 2 years at a $5 million AAV. Kind of getting mixed signals if he would come back or not. If that is on the table, the Jets should absolutely do it. He's still good when healthy. He has a clean bill of health, according to the Jets doctors. Recently that came out. Still a very good pass blocker in the NFL. 2 sacks allowed last year. Considering the options, I think he is one of the better available right tackles on the market. And something that I think would be a benefit is 2 things. One, the veteran leadership that he has is a good person to have in your locker room. And number 2, it keeps some continuity on the offensive line, where they have yet another offseason and another year working together with the same group of 5. I think that's a benefit. Shout out Ryan from Jets Talk 24/7. I'll talk some Jedrick Wills here. He's 25 years old. Projected deal is 1 year, $3 million. He did not work at left tackle for the Cleveland Browns, but he did play right tackle in college. Perhaps this is a project where you switch him back to his original position and hope that there's no injuries at his young age. The last 2 years, he's been a little injury riddled, and that's a concern. Penalties were a concern for him a year ago. 7 penalties in 5 games. He allowed 3 sacks over that span. Jedrick Wills is not my favorite option, making that clear, but he is someone who's young. Maybe they see the upside there and take a swing on it. My preference would be Morgan Moses returning, though. If you're looking for a swing tackle option / maybe someone who comes in and is signed as he's going to compete for the starting right tackle job. Dan Skipper from the Detroit Lions. He's 30 years old. 1 year, $2 million projection. He's been the Lions swing tackle forever. He's played both guard and tackle at the NFL level. I would say he's most likely not starting level material, but if you're looking for veteran depth and maybe some improvement at the depth, over guys like Carter Warren and over guys like Max Mitchell, this is someone who obviously knows Tanner Engstrand well, and maybe they're looking to bring him in. Other names to watch: Matt Pert with the Broncos. We know Darren Muji has the Broncos connection. Familiar face George Fant. And David Kissenberry, the veteran, is still out there kicking along. Okay, to the defense. Interior defensive line first. I've mentioned this guy a lot, but forgive me, it seems like a likely fit. Levi Onwuzurike, 27 years old. His projected contract, 2 years, $8.25 million AAV. He's 6'3", 290 pounds. The Glenn connection is one because he spent the first few years of his career with the Denver Broncos. He was finally healthy in 2024 after a couple years where injuries took over for him. And he was really solid on the interior, getting pressure on the quarterback. 45 total pressures and 3 sacks. More of a pass rusher than a run stuffer, but you're looking for obvious fits. Levi Onwuzurike coming in and starting next to Quinnen Williams seems like it would be a no-brainer to an extent. Here's some run stuffing options for the New York Jets. Poona Ford, 29 years old, 1 year, $3.5 million is his projected contract. He was awesome with the Chargers a year ago. Finally felt like he broke out to the extent that we saw from him earlier in his career. Big boy on the interior, run stuffing kind of role. Think the Al Woods role from a couple years ago. So if you're looking for some beef up front, Poona Ford fits that bill. DJ Jones, a little bit more expensive, around the same age, 30 years old. His projected contract, 2 years, $9 million, 6 foot, 305 pounds, still very disruptive in the run game. He has the Darren Muji connection with the Broncos. His 11.3% run stop rate, 11.3% run stop rate, ranked. A lot of R's in there. That was throwing me off. Ranked him third in the NFL among interior defenders a year ago. So that's one. If you don't maybe go with Onwuzurike and you want to spend a little bit, DJ Jones on the interior, even at 30, I would say, still makes some sense. Tyeri Tart is a name to watch. BJ Hill, kind of the same thing. And Calais Campbell, ageless wonder. I know he's in his late 30s. I believe he's 38, turning 39. But still is a productive player who can play on the edge or on the interior. And the Jets have been trying to sign him for like 3 years. New regime, so maybe that changes, but good player still. I'm going to give you some edge names too. Not that the Jets will spend big money at this position, but I think they're going to look for some depth with Jermaine Johnson returning from the Achilles injury. You have Will McDonald. Those two are going to be the starters, but you need a third option, especially in today's NFL. And I'll give you a couple guys who might fit that bill. So don't expect like some high-priced guy in here. We're looking for depth pass rush specialist kind of players. The first is Baron Browning, 26 years old. 1 year, $6 million is his projection. He's a former Denver Bronco. He had a 14.2 pressure rate in 2022 and 2023, which made him a good rotational edge. But injuries are a bit of a concern with him, at least from this past year. And I think he kind of fits that mold of a third edge. Azeez Ojulari, familiar face. He played with the New York Giants, was a popular name in the draft not that long ago. 25 years old, projected on a 1 year, $5 million cap hit. He is another pass rush specialist player. Don't like him as a starter, but he's a younger guy with upside as an edge 3. He had 7 sacks a year ago. He does get banged up a little bit, so you don't want to really play him a ton of snaps. But in third down situations, he's someone who can come on the field and get after the quarterback a little bit. And then just making a connection with Steve Wilks. How about Dennis Gardick, 30 years old, 1 year, $2.75 million is his projection. Long-time Arizona Cardinal situational pass rusher. He worked with Steve Wilks there. He had 6 sacks in 2023. Really nice season from him, but he tore his ACL this past year. He got hurt in week 7, so he might be hanging on the market, and you could get him cheaper than you normally would be able to because of that injury, but injury a factor. Keep that in mind when you're looking at him. Some names at linebacker. Jamien Sherwood is the big name that the Jets would like to retain. 25 years old, projected contract, I'll say around 3 years, $10 million AAV. He had 158 combo tackles a year ago. He developed nicely for the Jets over the last 3 years. Someone you would like to retain, but as I've stated with Robert Saleh in San Francisco and Jeff Ulbrich in Atlanta, those are 2 places to watch. If he does hit the market and signs elsewhere, those would be the teams that I think make the most sense for him. But yes, in a perfect world, you retain Jamien Sherwood. If you're going to go on a 1 year flyer with major upside, if you lose out on Jamien Sherwood, look at Dre Greenlaw from the San Francisco 49ers. He's 27 years old. His projected deal is a 1 year, $6 million deal, which is on the cheaper side. His best year was with Steve Wilks in 2023 in San Francisco. He got injured in the Super Bowl that year and didn't play much at all in 2024 due to injury. But he has the highest upside if fully recovered. And something that I like about Dre Greenlaw is he is a absolutely phenomenal coverage linebacker. The Jets linebackers at times struggle in coverage, specifically CJ Mosley, who I think the Jets might be moving on from this offseason. So if you're looking for a low cost but with potential high reward player, Dre Greenlaw fits that bill. I'll give you one more name here at linebacker, Cody Barton. 28 years old, 2 year, $4 million AAV is a projection. You could follow Darren Muji over from Denver. I thought he looked good in Denver last year. He's a great tackler, only has a 5.7 missed tackle rate in his career. Now, I mentioned good in coverage with Dre Greenlaw. That doesn't really fit the bill for Cody Barton, but he is a very good run defending linebacker. So stylistically a little bit different, but I'll give you an option as a run stopping linebacker and a coverage linebacker. And we'll see what the Jets decide they need in free agency if they do lose Jamie Sherwood. All right, here's some names at cornerback. Jets expected to lose DJ Reed, but Carlton Davis gets talked about a lot. His projected contract is 3 years, $14 million AAV. 28 years old. He was with Detroit last year after beginning his career with the Tampa Bay Bucks. 583 yards and 3 touchdowns allowed, had 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups. This was probably his best year as a pro, to be honest with you. This is a pricier option, and I'm not sold the Jets go pricey at the cornerback spot, but if Aaron Glenn's looking for someone who can kind of come in and show the younger defensive backs the ropes, Carlton Davis feels like he would fit that bill and would make a lot of sense. Brandon Echols, I think, is on a realistic path to coming back and competing for the Jets cornerback 2 role. He's 27 years old, thinking like 2 years, $4 million AAV. He started for the Jets in 2021 and looked okay. He's a good spot starter, has a nose for the ball, 2 interceptions in 4 starts this year, 5 interceptions for his career. A couple other names to watch: Jonathan Jones, an older veteran, Charvarius Ward, who spent some time with San Francisco, is going to be a little bit pricier, and Paulson Adebo at corner. Safety, you can make the case the Jets need a couple of new safeties in here. There's some rumblings that they may look to retain Tony Adams. We'll see if that happens. But if they do, it would be for more of a role player, not so much a starter. So I'll give you a bunch of names to look at safety. Huge position of need for the Jets. Speaking of former 49ers, Talona Hufunga, I believe I'm saying that correct. 26 years old, 2 year, $12.5 million AAV is his projection. Unfortunately, 2024 was an injury-riddled season for him. He was great in 2022. He was good in 2023 with Steve Wilks in this defense. It has the obvious connection to the new Jets defensive coordinator. So I'm looking for guys who have worked with either the Jets head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. 7 picks between his 22 and 23 season. He has a nose for the ball, solid tackler, and good coming down to make plays against the run. My favorite option at safety for the Jets is Cameron Bynum. He's 26 years old. His projected deal is 3 years, $14.25 million. He has 8 picks across 4 seasons in the league. Game changer when he makes the big plays. He's a great tackler, which is something that I love. I thought the Jets safeties last year missed way too many tackles, and it was frustrating for me. Just 9.3 missed tackle rate for his career. He's very good against the run. Mostly lines up as a free safety, which the Jets need both, but think of him as more of a free safety, although he has spent time playing other positions across the defensive backfield. Justin Reed, 28 years old, 3 years, $15.5 million is his AAV projection. He was great in Kansas City the last 3 years, specifically this past year after he started his career in Houston. In Houston, he had a problem with missed tackles, but that really went away the last 2 years after struggling with it early on in his career. He's more of a box safety than a deep safety. Very good against the run. So if you're looking for a strong safety option, Justin Reed. Bynum, more of a free safety option. And then another guy I'll give you before just some, talking about some other names briefly. Trayvon Moehrig, 25 years old, 4 years, $15 million AAV is his projection. Spent some time, or was, with the Vegas Raiders. His best year by far was this past year in 2024. Now, he lines up all over the field. He started as a free safety earlier in his career before splitting much more evenly at box safety and free safety the last 2 years. Does get some reps in the slot as well. Kind of reminds you of how the Detroit Lions use Brian Branch. So we know he would be a good fit scheme-wise. He's better against the run than in coverage. And I think he might be a touch pricier than that $15 million projection, but someone to keep an eye on because I think he fits how Aaron Glenn usually views safeties and what he likes to do with them. Some other names, Javon Holland might be the most priciest option, so I don't see the Jets in on that, but just a name to know. Justin Simmons, Jeremy Chin, Julian Blackmon, all other safety options that maybe the New York Jets can take a look at. One more group I want to talk about because it's a big need. Kicker. I don't think Greg Zuerlein will be back as the Jets kicker. So I'll give you two free agent options. Eddie Pinheiro is 29 years old. After losing the Jets job in 2022, he went to the Carolina Panthers and hit at 94.3%, 86.2, and then 84.6%. Over the last 3 years, he's only missed 2 kicks from 39 yards, or under. Just a solid kicking option, an upgrade over what Zuerlein is at this point in his career, unfortunately. Greg the Leg was awesome in 2023. He was statistically the worst kicker in the NFL last year. It's not hyperbole. If you look at the numbers, unfortunately was really that bad. And honestly, I can't believe this guy is still kicking at a high level, but he is. Nick Folk. Remember Nick Folk? 40 years old, still doing the damn thing all these years later. He was the Jets kicker from 2010 through 2016. He hit at 95.5% last year, led the NFL. The year before that, 96.7%, led the NFL. So this is the leader in that category in, field goal rate the last 2 seasons. He's a little bit older, so you always worry about it just going. But no question, at least now it seems like even at his age would still be an upgrade over Greg Zuerlein. So there you go. Went through a bunch of different positions on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, and even at kicker. Those are the names I think you should know about heading into free agency. Let me know what you think of these guys. Who do you think the Jets should target? What positions? Let me know all that in the comments. I'm Matt O'Leary. Subscribe if you're new, and I will catch you next time.